Hello and welcome to Talking Aussie Books, a weekly podcast bringing readers and writers of Australian fiction together. I'm Claudine Tonellis. As an avid reader and passionate advocate for Australian fiction, I have made it my mission to spotlight local talent. So if you're looking for your next read or simply want to learn more about the Australian literary scene, this podcast is for you. Grab yourself a cuppa, sit back and relax. Listeners, in this job, it's inevitable that you get to bump shoulders with other Australian podcasters. There's a plethora of them out there, all doing fabulous work to shine a spotlight on writing, either fiction or non-fiction, kids' books, debut authors, authors in general, the journey to publication, women writers, book clubs, and so much more. I've had the pleasure of being interviewed for other podcasts and by the same token have also hosted podcasters on my show. And today I'm delighted to welcome yet another podcaster to Talking Aussie Books. Kai Harvey is a Brisbane-based author and host of the Totally Lit podcast, a podcast dedicated to the celebration of reading, writing, and creating literature. With 100 episodes on offer right now, Kai has chatted with a wide range of authors, industry professionals, and booksellers, while also managing to showcase events and other happenings that are important to her. Things like the Totally Lit Microfiction Prize, which Kai instigated last year to provide opportunities and exposure for Aussie creatives, along with the AuthorPenPals program and Books in Homes, amongst others. Kai is the author of the kids' picture book, Easy Peasey, which was published by EK Books in 2023. In addition, Kai has won or been shortlisted in a number of writing competitions, which include the Hunter Writers Centre Grieve project. So with all of that in mind, I'm delighted to chat with Kai for Talking Aussie Books today. Welcome, Kai.
Hi, Claudine. Thank you so much for having me.
Kai, you're obviously a woman of many talents as well as interests. But in terms of your writing, I wondered if you could tell me about your book, Easy Peasey, and what prompted you to write it.
Easy Peasey was inspired by my dad taking me roller skating when I was a young girl. It was one of those things that we did together. I think, didn't quite know what to do with a little girl. So we would go fishing and cycling, and we ran in fun runs and go sailing and lots of things that fathers and sons would usually do together. But he also took me roller skating, which I loved because it was music, flashing lights, and it was a bit more my style. So when I was thinking about writing picture book, I wanted to tap into like the little girl in me, and that is how Easy Peasey came out when I was sitting at the laptop going, okay, I want the world to have a little piece of me. Also, my son, he had a skateboard when he was little that he loved, and he would take it to bed with him. And so that's in the book as well, with Ruby taking her roller skates to bed because she loves them so much. So I guess when I was looking at getting published, I'd written a few stories that weren't getting much traction. And I was like, well, I need to put more of myself in the book and also tap into what kids actually want to read. Then I got a publishing contract and now it is 2 years old. So
Hard to believe how quickly time passes. So for the benefit of listeners who haven't yet encountered your work with Easy Peasey, can you tell us what it's all about?
Ruby gets a set of roller skates for her birthday and she is absolutely in love with them because they're her favorite color. They're glittery red roller skates. She opens them, loves them so much, takes them to bed with her on the first night. The second day, she straps on her skates and thinks that she will just roll out into the sunset. Unfortunately, it's a bit harder and she has a few crashes and a few bumps and bruises. And Dad is just in the background going, I can help. And Ruby, of course, is saying, no, I can do it. I can do it. But the next night, the skates then go into the cupboard. They don't go to bed like a teddy bear. And she comes round to the decision that she's not going to be able to do it all by herself. And she lets Dad take her to the roller skating rink and they learn together. So I wasn't that difficult with learning to skate. I just let Dad teach me, but you do need to have tension to move a plot forward. But I did also want to share that it's okay to ask for help when you're learning something because we all have times in our lives where things can be hard and it's not a weakness to say, can somebody teach me how to do this? So learning to acknowledge when it's okay to ask for help, I thought was a good message to embed in the book.
Yeah, I absolutely love that part of the book. Ruby clearly has a special relationship with her dad. And I know that you said it was kind of inspired by your own relationship with your dad, but was that particularly something you wanted to explore in the book?
Yes, in that even before I started my writing career, when I was just talking about writing, I would get emails from my dad when we were living in Sydney. He'd be like, oh, the New South Wales Writers Centre has this course on, or just gently supporting my dream. And so that has kind of been the relationship I've had with my dad all along, that he's there to help me do whatever I dream of, and is like a gentle supporter and doesn't force things onto me, I guess, but always there by my side to help me achieve those dreams. So having that in the book, I think, yeah, I wanted to demonstrate a daughter and father in a positive light as well, that relationship, because there are lots of kids who are only children who don't have brothers and sisters, or they may only have a dad as the person caring for them, and it can be a lovely relationship. So I wanted to portray that.
Indeed. And I think you've absolutely achieved that with this book. It is a beautiful and special relationship that you've managed to convey in such a very short space of time, which I think is wonderful.
It's an art. It's hard work writing a picture book. Although I'm feeling pressure now, my mum needs a book. And I'm like, oh, she's been an amazing support for me as well. And I'm like, oh no, what am I going to write? So mum's got a book as well.
I was going to ask you, and obviously you're continuing to work in this space, but was Easy Peasy your first attempt at writing a kid's picture book, or had you
No,
tried
it's
others?
probably my fifth manuscript. My previous manuscripts were based around experiences my sons had had growing up. They're both on the autism spectrum, and I had wanted to sort of portray some of their experiences and how peers can support kids who are on the spectrum, because it can be difficult if you're seeing children not coping, and if they're your friend or you're their teacher or carer, how do you support someone when they can't articulate how they're feeling themselves? So I've got those manuscripts there and I'm still submitting them and working on them. They sometimes get close, but not quite cross the line. And that's an experience all authors have. You can love the pieces that you've written, but they don't necessarily end up where you'd hope.
Absolutely. You've written short stories in other genres. So I guess I wanted to know, do you aspire to write for adults, or is kids fiction where your heart lies and where you're going to stay?
I love kids' fiction. I would like to write a novel length piece of work and continue to write short stories. So this year I've submitted to a number of writing competitions and did just recently get all the no's and go, oh, okay. But it's just a matter of continuing to write, get fresh ideas and keep submitting.
Kai, like you, I combine my desire to write with many other projects, including the podcast. And the question I most get asked is, why did I start the podcast? So I wondered if I could ask you the same thing. What made you decide to get on this roller coaster ride?
It is a roller coaster. I was a big fan of podcasts. I love true crime, and I had considered doing a true crime podcast, but I realized very early on in that I don't have the time to do the research. And I think those kind of podcasts, you really need to give those respect and time and be thorough and accurate with your information. And my daily life wouldn't allow to do that. So I was like, oh, I would still like to start a podcast. What if I try interviewing other authors? And my husband is a podcaster already in the comic book space. So his podcast is called Waiting for Doom, which is around the Doom Patrol from the DC universe. And so because he was already skilled in podcasting, I'd asked him to help me. And so he is my editor slash producer, and I do the interviews. Part of it was just from my frustration of submitting manuscripts and the time that you have to wait to get a response. So if it's 12 months or 18 months before you get your no back and you're sitting, I feel creating something that I can get an instant response from helps me while I'm waiting for those long-term projects to come into fruition.
The other thing I want to ask you is, does it feel difficult to continue to feed your creativity while doing the podcast, or do you think it enhances your creativity?
There are times where I go, oh, I'm very busy. I could be spending this time writing, but I feel very buoyed by the relationships and connections that I build with my guests on the show. So I feel like I've created community and connection in a way that I couldn't do if I was just sitting at my laptop writing. I feel like it sustains me to continue going. So I think potentially if I had submitted one story and got a no, perhaps I would not be still writing Whereas now I feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself.
That's such an apt way of describing what I mentioned earlier was a bit of a roller coaster ride, because it does take quite a bit of work to produce a podcast, doesn't it?
Yeah, there is a lot of work involved, especially planning content, thinking ahead for the next 12 months, booking in your guests, thinking about the strategy, about where you want to take the direction of the podcast as well. And initially, those things I didn't really realize that would be part of the project, I guess. And also thinking about what listeners want to hear about as well is very important, because if you're just rambling on a podcast and nobody wants to listen to it, what's the point? It's taught me a lot of skills, and also I've discovered things about myself I didn't know either. So it is really nice when you finish an interview and the guest says to you, "Oh, thank you, that was a great interview," or "I really enjoyed those questions." Like, there's a lot of satisfaction in feeling like you're doing a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So to that end, I wondered, how do you curate your guest list? Is it by chance, like, people that submit to you, or is it you sitting down, as you mentioned, and planning out, you want to touch on certain topics over the course of a particular season and then going about sourcing your guests?
Initially, it was just planned by whoever I bumped into at an event. So my very first guest that I asked was Edwina Shaw, who is a wonderful author here in Brisbane. And I began with her, one, because she's such a talented force in our industry, but also because I was brave enough to be able to approach her. But I was very like, "Oh, I've got this crazy idea. Would you be my first guest?" And it eventuated that she wasn't actually the first guest, but she was the first person to agree to come on the show. So then I just kept doing that. And what then happened was suddenly there were requests from PR agencies and then from publishers. And now I do like to curate the podcast as much as I can so that I talk to people that I'm interested in learning from myself, but also trying to keep a balance between some of the bigger names but also some of the emerging names, being mindful that the bigger names pull the listeners, but I always want to be able to give space to people who are starting out. Now I get quite a lot of pictures in my inbox, and there's times where I feel a bit overwhelmed because there's not enough hours in the day to be able to say yes to everybody that requests a spot. And also that balance of considering, okay, I may have an hour this week that I could do an interview, but is it something people will want to listen to? Or how can we work on turning it into something that people want to listen to? So it's not necessarily about selling someone's book. Like, I want to talk about their writing experience and how they came from that initial idea of I want to be a writer to the established author they are. So making sure that I'm talking about things that people want to hear, and my main audience are writers. So I'm always trying to curate the content in a way that will be interesting for people to listen to.
I love that. So what's your favorite thing about being a podcaster?
It is a bit addictive, which is interesting, but I do really enjoy having conversations with great authors and listening to their process. I am coming around to, like, I'm asking for what's the magic, what's the key, and really what it is sitting down and doing the work. So some of the answers are obvious, but hearing people's stories and the way they've persevered to get a published book, because it's not an easy process. So yeah, I love talking to authors and having great conversations. And also it keeps me motivated as well when you're hearing people worked really hard and it may have taken them 10 years to get their first book published. And like, it only took me 18 months to get my first picture book published. So appreciating, okay, like that happened pretty quickly. Now there's a little bit of a gap in my publishing history, but that's okay because it's what happens to all of us. But the key is not giving up.
A question that I get asked a lot and I never really know how to answer, and in fact, I don't think I do really answer, is do I have a favorite episode or guest? What's my most memorable podcast episode? Do you have one? Are you able to answer that question?
It's a bit embarrassing because I had Dave Faulkner from the Hoodoo Gurus on to talk songwriting. That was like a career highlight for me to chat to him. And he was so generous with his time as well. So I was a little bit of a fangirl in that way, but also like learning about, or what I'm trying to share is that there's so many different ways to create and to write. And so I'm always looking for, can I chat to a songwriter? Can I chat to somebody that's writing for TV, script writing, poetry, all those kind of things. But it means that it's a very broad podcast. And in some ways, people won't know what's coming next, but I'm trying to have variety as well.
Fantastic. As I mentioned in my introduction, Kai, you have a number of passion projects you're actively involved in and which you advocate for. And one of them is the Totally Lit Microfiction Prize, which I mentioned. And last year was the inaugural year. So I wondered if you could tell us about the competition and what prompted you to establish it.
I have crazy ideas that just strike me like lightning, but I do want to establish myself as part of the publishing industry. And I'm writing, I'm podcasting, and I'm like, oh, what else can I do to create connection? And so I started playing around with the idea of a writing competition. And that was like a big project to manage as well, because there's so many moving parts to think about. And I was like, oh, do I actually have capacity and ability to take something on like that? And I always feel compelled to give. And so I wanted to attach some support for the Carers Foundation. And we established a scholarship as part of the prize, which was for a carer to have the opportunity to go to a writing retreat and have some time to engage with fellow creatives and have a bit of time to write and also get a bit of feedback on their work. Because one thing I do understand about being a carer myself is that it's impossible at times to do anything for yourself. Because you're looking after a loved one who has extra needs than normal. Most of your life is dedicated to supporting them, and you get very little time to do the things that you want to do. And writing takes time. So it almost feels like an impossible task. So I wanted to create that part of the prize as well. So I just then started putting out feelers to a few writing friends here in Brisbane about who might come on board as judges. And so I had a great team of judges to support me, and then started reaching out for sponsors and had a great response. And I was like, oh, I think this thing is going to work. So there was a lot of reading involved and admin, but I had a great virtual assistant helping me as well with that. We also got some amazing entries from very talented authors all over Australia. So it was really good to see the community supporting the initiative as well.
Lovely. And so if listeners were interested in submitting, Kai, where do they find information about the competition?
They just need to go to my website, which is www.kaigarvey.com. And there's a page dedicated to the competition there.
Fantastic. Now, as a person who's dabbled in the short story genre myself, I am intrigued by the Australian Short Story Festival, which is happening again this year. And I understand that you were either involved or attended the festival last year. Is that right?
I supported the festival with some podcast interviews last year. So that was exciting to chat to some short story authors that are very talented and they've won lots of awards. And I have won a few small awards, but to chat to people who are masters in their craft was exciting. I was happy to support the Australian Short Story Festival because short stories are my passion along with kid lit.
So, what's your favourite thing about this genre?
I like that you can create such passion and emote so much in such a short space. I did enter the Grieve short story competition. I think it was 2017 or 18, and the piece I submitted came third. And part of that was we went down to Newcastle for the presentation of the prizes, but they also had actors reading our pieces aloud and watching the audience reaction. Unfortunately, it's mainly about grief and death, those stories. So seeing the audience respond with tears and emotion was the first time I really realized how much words can have power, and you can do that in a really short space and use words efficiently and well to get the response that you're looking for. So I find when I write a short story and it's good, like you have that feeling like of satisfaction and excitement that, oh, this was really good. And then to be able to share it with other people and see them interpret and receive that information, because of course they're using their own experience to bring to that story, but it's good when they get what you're trying to say as well.
I think the festival is in Adelaide this year. Is that correct? And are you going?
That's right. I did think about reaching out to the SA team to see if I could do some podcasting for them this year, but I'm absolutely at capacity. I'm trying to not overwhelm my poor husband who does a lot of my editing. I have now outsourced to an editor who's been amazing to help us. I think people don't get with podcasting is it can consume your whole life. And if you're not careful and if you over record, you are then bogged down with just doing the editing and the promoting. I, at the moment, have about 4 or 5 episodes that are in a queue waiting to be edited. And you have to be careful with your planning that you don't say, yes, you can come on the show. And then you've suddenly got too many episodes and they're not coming out in a timely fashion either. So if you're discussing something that people need to hear at a certain time, but then you're backlogged, that kind of loses the effect and purpose of doing the interview as well.
Kai, in your bio, you describe yourself as a disability and carer advocate. We've heard of some of your personal reasons as to why that might be so. And it's also clear from the range of projects you involve yourself in that you're a person who enjoys supporting other people. So I guess I wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit more about your efforts in this space and what drives you.
I think the main thing that drives me is my lived experience, in that there has been times in my life where I've felt very alone and unable to provide what my children need. And all parents will understand this. You love those little beings so much. And when they need something more that you can't provide, you become desperate and resourceful and amazing. And you find all these things about yourself that you never knew. But that feeling of not knowing who to go to or not having the funds to pay for an appointment that your sons might need, or just I'm feeling overwhelmed and I don't even have someone to talk to about it. I don't want anyone else to ever feel that, but I'm realistic enough to know that there are many people out there feeling that right now. So I've been using my platform to reach out and say, hey, there are resources, even if it's you call the Carers Foundation or your local carers. There's Carers Queensland here, but there's organisations right across the country. Just make that phone call. They're there to help you. And also, when things seem hard or overwhelming, it's only a point in time. Things change. But you've got to, the thing that gets you through those dark times is hope. So I'm always wanting to promote ways to share hope. I don't know if I'm a bit nuts. Maybe I should just sit down and go, stop. But the thing that propels me is the hope to get published, the hope to share a great podcast interview. Those sort of things keep me going. And I really want to plant that seed, other people that are experiencing that, that the way to lift yourself up out of those times is to reach out and have connection with other people. So I'm always looking at ways to create that connection for people.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so beautifully said. A couple of the other programs or sort of projects that you're involved in, the AuthorPenPals program and Books in Homes. I wondered if you could tell listeners a bit about both of those programs.
They're great ways to connect with kids. I think as a kids author, we have our initial launch and we do our bookshop visits and library visits. But then once you've done your first round of selling your book, that's when some of that activity stops. But programs like AuthorPenPals and Books in Homes gives you that opportunity to connect with kids further, but also to promote literacy as well. I think that's one thing I've been really pleased to be able to reach out to kids and just say, I was a little kid once. Look where I am now. I've got my own book. I've got my own podcast. And yeah, going into schools and having opportunities to connect with those kids, like you can tell the ones that are just like you and go, you can be a writer if you want, but also it's about sharing. You can be anything that you want to be as well. I'm not the greatest author pen pal because I need to write more to my school, but it is a joy to get the letters back and you get drawings and things like that and just connecting with the kids. When I was growing up, we had John Marsden come and visit my school and oh my goodness, it blew my mind, and just having him come and talk to us, although he didn't quite have the catalogue of books that he does now. at the end of his career, but it was still very thrilling to meet a real author who meant something to us and him share, I put my ideas in a scrapbook and have the opportunity to ask a question and feel listened to and validated by someone you aspire to be was great. So being able to do that is awesome.
And if anyone wanted to learn more about either of those programs, are there details, are there sort of websites people can go to?
There are, I think it's just authorpenpals.com.au. No, just .com. Kate Foster works on that with a great team. Authors can go to that website, authorpenpals.com, and register to be involved. And they do like an intake each year, and you get assigned a school to write to. And that's lots of fun. And Books in Homes.
It was initially booksinhomes.com, but I think it's booksinhomes.com.au now.
And so that's great. And that is also sponsored by Scholastic, who provide the books. And when you go to visit the school, you also deliver a book pack to each child, which is wonderful for them to be able to take home some books to read for themselves. My last Books in Homes visit, a young reader came up to me. She's like, "Oh my goodness, you're Kai Garvey. I'm so excited to meet you." I'm like, "Oh, are you sure you're talking about me?" Like I was like, "Oh, somebody's read my book." Yeah, it's such a thrill to meet readers who've read your book and know who you are. And also that they might say, "Oh, I'd like to be a writer too." And I'm like, "Yes, you can do it."
So Kai, in terms of your writing, you mentioned that you were working on perhaps or have finished another kid's picture book for your mum.
Yes.
Is there something else that you're working on as well?
I've got 2 more picture books that are in my head that I need to take some time to sit down and put on paper. And they're a little bit of a departure from what I've been writing previously, because also I'm trying to write to get published as well. So I think my first initial manuscripts that I wrote, I was very passionate about, I want to write things for the boys and to get their message out. But they're now 19 and 22. And that, even though it is very important for me to share those stories for other little people who have ADHD or autism, I guess as my life is shifting and changing, some of the manuscripts I'm writing are changing as well. But I also think it appears that the manuscripts where I put myself in them, they seem to be more authentic and being noticed more. So even though I would like to have those manuscripts that I've previously written published, I'm recognizing that they may not have the same authenticity of the other things that I'm writing that have more of myself in them.
Hi, if you wanted listeners to know one additional thing about you, what would that be?
I have a great podcast. If people would like to listen to that, I have a writing competition. And yeah, I guess just that I've got more stories to tell.
Fantastic. And so how can listeners tune into your podcast, Kai?
Well, wherever you listen to your podcasts, you can type in Totally Lit and it should come up with my lovely logo. My host account is Podbean, but I'm on iTunes and Spotify. And we've also got, you can go to kaigarvey.com and I've got the feed on my website as well.
Kai, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you today. And I might mention that this podcast recording came about because of your support for the Authors and Artists for Palestine fundraiser from earlier this year. So I want to say thank you again for your support and for joining me on Talking Aussie Books today.
Thank you so much, Claudine. I'm very happy to support that cause as well.
That's it for this episode, folks. Hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. If so, I'd love it if you'd leave a review on your preferred listening platform, which may include Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Until next time, friends, happy reading.